After 29 years, they fired me on a Tuesday. My pension would have vested that Friday. That's not a metaphor, not a dramatic exaggeration. That's exactly what happened. I walked into the office that morning thinking it was just another quiet day. My calendar was full of handoff meetings, training check-ins, because I was already grooming my replacement. That was the plan. I'd retire with dignity, collect the pension I'd worked nearly 3 decades for, and finally exhale. But instead, they handed me a beige folder and asked me to join them in the small conference room near the elevators. It was cold in there and quiet. Kevin, my manager, half my age, wouldn't even look me in the eye. The HR lady, who I trained when she was an intern, read from a script like she was practicing for a school play. We regret to inform you that due to internal restructuring, your position has been eliminated, effective immediately. Effective immediately. 3 words that snap 29 years of loyalty in half. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just looked at them, these 2 people who owed their careers, in some way, to the foundation I helped build, and I nodded. Then I gathered my things, all 5 of them, because after all this time, I had already started letting go, just not like this. But while they thought they blindsided me, they had no idea I was holding on to something they hadn't considered. Dior, 1 phone number, just 1. Not to a lawyer, not to the press, but to someone they forgot I still had in my corner, and with that 1 phone call, I made sure this wasn't the story of a woman who got robbed 3 days before retirement. It became the story of a woman who rewrote the ending. Have you ever spent your whole life building something, only to have it snatched away the moment you reach the finish line? Then keep listening, because this story, it might just be yours too. I started at the company when fax machines still chirped and we used whiteout to fix our reports. I was 33, newly married, full of hope, and needed the job to help pay our first mortgage. Back then, the office only had 22 employees. We shared 1 break room, took turns with the microwave, and remembered each other's kids' birthdays. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt like something worth building. I began as an administrative assistant, but I was curious. Every time someone left a process half-finished, I figured out how to streamline it. When a report was late, I offered to automate part of it. I didn't ask for promotions, I earned them. 1 project at a time. 1 weekend sacrificed at a time. By the time I hit my 15th year, I was overseeing 2 departments, training new hires, managing client relations, and cleaning up after VP messes. Quietly. Effectively. They never had to worry when I was around, and I think that's what made me invisible. Reliable becomes forgettable, especially when you're a woman over 50 in a room full of rising stars half your age. About 2 years ago, the company went through a digital evolution. The founders sold a chunk to investors, and with that came Kevin. Kevin was sharp, confident, and surgically polite. He introduced himself by saying, "I'm here to optimize efficiency and energize new leadership pathways." Translation, "I'm here to trim the old wood." He never said it out loud, but you could feel it. Suddenly, our department meetings got streamlined. I stopped being invited to strategic planning sessions. Instead, I was asked to focus on transitional training. I wasn't angry. I understood the game. So I did what I always did. I adapted. But one moment still sticks with me. It was 6 months ago. I'd just come back from a long client meeting, exhausted but proud. Linda, our head of finance, and a dear friend of mine, pulled me aside in the hallway. She whispered, "You should talk to someone about your pension paperwork. Just check the timing on the vesting. Make sure everything's set." I looked at her, confused. She didn't say more, but her eyes said plenty. That night, I pulled out my file drawer at home. You know the kind, metal, heavy, filled with decades of paper that most people would have thrown away. There it was. A clause buried in a 1998 amendment. Employees with 30 years of continuous service who remain employed until the final vesting period shall receive full pension benefits, payable beginning the first Friday of the month following maturity. My final vesting date? Friday, March 3rd. I highlighted that clause in yellow and left it on my desk, just in case. Not because I thought they'd do something, but because a part of me didn't trust them anymore. Not after what I'd seen happen to others. The last few months were strange. Kevin kept asking for documentation I'd already sent. HR accidentally left me out of emails about year-end reviews. My team started getting reassigned. And Linda, she looked more anxious every week. I'd been planning my retirement party quietly. Nothing big, just something small with the team who still remembered what we built. But deep down, I had a bad feeling. Like the air had shifted. Like the elevator music had gone off-key, and no one noticed but me. And I wish I could tell you I was wrong, that it was just nerves or cynicism. But no, they waited until the very last week, Tuesday morning, 3 days before I would have been fully vested, and they let me go. But what they didn't realize was I still had something they didn't know about, and that one thing would change everything. It didn't happen in a proper meeting room. They asked me to come to HR under the pretense of annual documentation updates. There was no coffee, no chair across the table waiting for me. Just Kevin standing beside the HR manager, arms crossed like he was posing for a company brochure. "Thanks for coming in. Margaret," he said too cheerfully. "We wanted to touch base about some changes coming down from corporate." I already knew. I could feel it. HR read a prepared statement. Kevin watched my face like I was a lab experiment. "As part of our restructuring efforts, we've decided to eliminate certain legacy roles. Your position is one of them. This decision is effective immediately." I didn't ask questions, didn't even blink. But inside, I wasn't shocked. I was confirming. Something I'd feared for months. They printed my exit paperwork with cold efficiency. A bullet list of what I would be forfeiting. Vacation payout, final check, health coverage, and of course, pension benefits. At the bottom of the second page, in fine print, it read, "Employee did not meet vesting requirements for pension benefit eligibility." Just like that, a lifetime reduced to a footnote. No. When I got home that evening, I walked into my kitchen, placed the folder on the table, and stared at it for what felt like an hour. Then I reached under the kitchen sink, pulled out the metal lockbox. It held documents most people would have shredded years ago, but I had kept everything, every version of my contract, pension policy updates, emails from HR, and that clause from 1998 I'd highlighted in yellow. Employees with 30 years of continuous service who remain employed until the final vesting period. They had timed it. 3 days. That wasn't a coincidence. That was calculated. They didn't want to pay what I had earned, so they eliminated me just before they had to. But here's the part they didn't expect. 6 months ago, when Linda warned me to double-check my benefits, I'd followed up with someone she recommended, a pension rights advocate named Elena Ramirez. Elena used to work inside corporate pension departments until she got tired of watching companies pull moves just like this. We'd only spoken briefly, and I hadn't followed through, but now I picked up the phone and dialed her number. She answered on the second ring, "Elena Ramirez." I swallowed hard. "This is Margaret Whitman. You told me to call if anything ever felt off." "Up!" By noon the next day, she had all my paperwork. By that evening, she'd found what she called a textbook bad faith termination. She explained it like this. If you can prove that they deliberately timed your termination to avoid paying out your pension, it opens them up to liability, financial and reputational, especially if there's a pattern, or if they violated internal policy regarding retirement timelines. Elena asked one question that cracked everything open. Did anyone at the company ever hint at your upcoming vesting date? Any awareness that it was close? I paused, then remembered, Kevin. During a casual hallway chat 2 months ago, he'd asked, out of nowhere, "Remind me again." Margaret. "When your pension kicks in? That's exciting." At the time, I thought nothing of it. But now, it was proof. He knew, and then he timed it. I called Linda. She was quiet at first, then said, "There's something I didn't know whether I should tell you. But now I will. A month before I was let go, she had seen a Slack message from Kevin to HR that read, "Let's clean this up before her benefits trigger. Legal says we're in the clear if we do it before March 3rd. She took a screenshot. She'd kept it. She emailed it to me that night. When I forwarded it to Elena, her reply was almost immediate. "They're done. We're going to push this up the chain," and quietly. Elena didn't go to court right away. She knew better. Instead, she sent a formal notice of dispute to the company's pension board, HR department, and internal counsel. It was precise, calm, and devastating. Attached were my employment timeline, vesting calculations, the Slack message from Kevin, my employment agreement from 1998, and a legal opinion that outlined clear evidence of bad faith termination to avoid pension payout. No accusations, just documentation. We gave them 5 business days to respond before media involvement or legal action. 3 days later, I received an email from a senior partner I'd never met. "Dear Mrs. Whitman, we regret the recent disruption in your tenure with us. After further internal review, we believe additional compensation is warranted. We are prepared to honor the original pension vesting arrangement in full." Just like that. No apology, no admission, but a full reversal. Mini twist. Elena called me later that night. "You know why they gave in, right?" she said. "Because they were afraid of going to court?" She chuckled. "No, because I copied a reporter I used to work with on the notice. Just BCC'd her. I didn't even say a word. But they knew I had leverage. And companies like that, they don't fear lawsuits. They fear headlines. So, they thought I'd go quietly. But all it took was one phone call to the right person. And I was just getting started. Oh, I'd like to tell you that getting that email was satisfying, that it felt like justice. But truthfully, it just felt quiet. Not because they didn't give me what I was owed, but because I realized how calculated it all had been. How little my 29 years had meant to them in the end. How long they must have been planning this. That silence lit something in me. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about how often this happens to women like me. Loyal, experienced, over 50, and invisible. The moment we become expensive. So I told Elena I wanted more than just the pension. "I want my name back," I said. "I want them to feel this in the boardroom." She didn't flinch. Her response? "Then we go strategic." The first move was subtle. Elena drafted a second letter, not to HR, not to legal, but to the board of directors. It was a professional memorandum outlining evidence of targeted termination to avoid financial obligation, risk of repeat offenses to other legacy employees, the reputational impact of mishandling senior staff, and an offer. Resolve this internally through transparent correction and policy reform or face escalation. She CC'd no one. No leaks. No drama. Just quiet, legal precision. Meanwhile, I called Linda again. "Do you still have access to the internal attrition reports?" I asked. She did. Within 24 hours, she sent over a spreadsheet. There it was in plain numbers. 3 senior employees had been let go within 90 days of their pension vesting in the past 2 years. All of them women. All of them over 55. All of them had left without a fight. Elena updated our file. She now had the pattern, the motive, the paper trail. The board had no choice. A week later, they called a private executive session meeting. Kevin wasn't invited. Mini twist. That same week, Linda overheard something during a meeting with finance. Apparently, the company was weeks away from finalizing a multi-million-dollar government contract, one that required full disclosure of employment practices related to age discrimination. Elena and I didn't even need to make a public threat. The board put the pieces together on their own. They moved fast. 2 days later, I received a call from the board liaison. He spoke slowly, carefully. "We'd like to extend a formal acknowledgement of the value you brought to this organization over the past 29 years. As part of our internal review, we're issuing a public statement recognizing your contributions and clarifying your full pension eligibility. He paused. Additionally, we're initiating a third-party audit of our retirement and termination procedures and forming an internal advisory group to ensure this never happens again. We'd like to invite you to participate, if you're open to it. I nearly dropped the phone, not because I wanted to go back, but because I knew I had changed the system from the outside, quietly, strategically, completely. The next week, the company released a LinkedIn post. It wasn't flashy, but there it was. As part of our continued commitment to ethical leadership, we're proud to honor the career of Margaret Whitman, whose 29 years of service helped build the foundation we stand on today. We are revisiting internal structures to ensure long-term employee contributions are always met with fairness and respect. I didn't share it. I didn't even comment. But I watched it quietly rack up hundreds of likes and noticed how many employees, current and former, began sharing their own stories in the replies. I wasn't done yet. Elena and I took that momentum and built a toolkit, a downloadable checklist for employees nearing retirement age on what to look for in contracts, red flags in HR behavior, and how to protect their benefits before it's too late. We launched it with a nonprofit she partners with. Within 48 hours, over 3,000 downloads, mostly from women, many from corporate emails. Then came the call I didn't expect. A well-known business podcast wanted to interview me anonymously. At first, I declined. But Elena said something that stuck with me. You didn't just save your own pension, you made sure they can't do this to the next woman. That's worth sharing. So I did it, voice disguised, name withheld. But the story? The story was all mine. Final mini twist of the climax. Kevin, he didn't get fired, but he quietly resigned 2 weeks later. No announcement, no farewell party, just gone. And someone else, someone older, someone seasoned, was brought in to restore team morale. I smiled when I heard, because sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it's just done. I got my pension. But more than that, I got my power back, and I wasn't finished yet. Though, for years, I'd been taught to believe justice was something you earned by being good, by working hard, by staying loyal. But the truth is, justice only shows up when you're willing to fight for it. And now, after years of being the silent fixer, the dependable woman in the background, I had finally found my voice. And I wasn't done using it. Hey, the company's LinkedIn post acknowledging me was just the beginning, because behind the scenes, the real reckoning was happening. Elena had started tracking a broader pattern. Over a dozen women, ages 55 and up, had quietly reached out to her after hearing whispers about my story. Some had been pushed into early retirement. Others let go months before their vesting. All of them felt like what happened to me wasn't unique, just the first time someone pushed back hard enough. So we gave them space to speak. Elena's nonprofit created a secure, anonymous intake portal. And within a week, we had something explosive, a clear, consistent pattern of corporate age-based cost cutting. Same phrases, same tactics, same timing. One woman, Denise, shared that her role was merged with a junior analyst's 45 days before she hit her 25-year milestone. Another, Patricia, was told her knowledge wasn't scalable in a digital environment, despite leading a system migration that saved the company $1.4 million. It was a script. They were following a war script, and now we had enough voices to break it. Here's where it gets personal again. 2 weeks after my public acknowledgement, the company reached out, not to offer a job, not even to apologize, but to ask if I would consider coming in for a SARC-recorded legacy interview, part of their Celebrating 30 Years of Excellence campaign. The irony? They didn't have 30 years without me, and they sure didn't treat me with excellence. Still, I said yes, but only under my terms. I walked back into that building for the first time in a month, not as an employee, but as someone they had to listen to. I wore navy, no logo, simple gold earrings, and a flash drive in my pocket. When the camera rolled, I didn't tell the sanitized version of my story. I told the truth about sacrifice, about being sidelined, about what it meant to almost lose everything 3 days before it was mine, and about what happened when I stopped staying silent. I didn't blame, I didn't attack, but I looked directly at the lens and said, when you've given everything to something for 29 years, you don't walk away quietly. You make sure the door stays open for the next woman. They didn't post the full interview, but enough people were in the room to hear it, and word spread. Then came the latkeo. The Department of Labor contacted Elena's office. One of the women from the portal had submitted our findings. It triggered an informal review, nothing public, not yet, but enough to scare the executives. You could feel the shift. Hiring froze. Policy memos went out. Leadership reshuffled internally. HR started holding listening sessions for senior employees. None of this was coincidence. This was pressure. Applied, sustained, strategic. And me? I was invited to speak at a National Human Resources Leadership Conference. My panel, Protecting Long-Term Employees, Risk or Asset. They tried to call me a case study, but I was a mirror and a warning. Oh, the final twist, the woman who replaced me, she resigned. Apparently, she'd been promised a promotion and support, but once the pressure mounted, the company shifted blame onto her, said she was unprepared for high-level transition. Linda forwarded me the resignation memo. It ended with, I came to build, not to clean up other people's messes. Ironic, because for 29 years, that's exactly what I did, and no one noticed until the one time I refused to be erased. Our injustice? It didn't come in a courtroom. It came in how policy changes, whispers in the hallway, and the way they now hesitate. Before letting another woman walk out with 3 days left. Mini cliffhanger and sangfani emotional payoff. They thought cutting me would save money, but in the end, what they lost cost them more than they ever expected. I didn't walk away with a lawsuit. I didn't storm out in tears. I didn't even get a proper goodbye lunch. But I got something far better. I got my power back. In the weeks that followed, I found myself breathing differently. Not because life suddenly got easier, but because I was finally living on my terms. No more checking work emails before my feet hit the floor. No more sacrificing weekends to prep reports I wouldn't get credit for. No more pretending that loyalty was the same as value, because for 29 years, I believed if I just worked hard enough, stayed quiet enough, showed up enough, someone would tap me on the shoulder and say, you made it, you matter. But that moment never came. It had to come from me. Now, I spend my mornings walking with my neighbor, Susan. She's 61, a retired nurse, and used to think she was too old to start anything new. Last week, we sat at her kitchen table and mapped out the outline for her first Etsy shop. She's selling hand-stitched quilts. The first one is named 29 Years. She says it's in my honor. And I started writing again. Not reports, not exit memos, but letters. To women who feel like they've outlived their usefulness in places they helped build. To women who've been quietly erased, one policy at a time. Some of those letters turn into blog posts. Some stay tucked away in my drawer. But all of them remind me I am not alone. And neither are you. You know, we don't talk enough about what it feels like to become invisible in the workplace. The way people stop making eye contact when your hair grays. How your ideas suddenly need to be repackaged by someone 20 years younger to sound innovative. How you become the person they thank at the end of a slide deck after taking all the credit. But here's the truth I learned. You don't lose value with time. You gain wisdom. And once you stop waiting for recognition and start demanding respect, everything changes. I didn't fight to go back. I fought to move forward with clarity, so with dignity, with a roadmap others can use. And now, I mentor women who are preparing for the same battle I went through. Not just how to protect their pensions, but how to protect their peace. Because yes, you can file the right papers, but sometimes the most important thing is learning how to let go without losing yourself. One moment I'll never forget, Linda called me weeks later, voice soft. They're revising the internal exit policy. All HR staff now have to sign a compliance form confirming awareness of pension vesting dates before terminations. They're calling it the Margaret Clause. I laughed, not because I wanted my name on anything, but because I knew that change would outlast my presence. And that's real legacy. Final reflection, philosophical payoff. People assume victory looks like getting everything back, but sometimes victory is knowing they can't take anything more from you. They can take the job, the title, the parking spot, even the farewell sheet cake, but they cannot take your voice, your worth, your story. And if you know how to use all three, you don't just win. You teach others how to win quietly too. Have you ever come this close to getting what you worked a lifetime for, only to watch someone pull it away? Have you ever been treated like a number, a cost, an outdated function on someone's spreadsheet? Then this story is yours too. Tell me your story in the comments. I read them, all of them, because we're not just building a community, we're building a record, a map, a movement. And if this touched something in you, hit subscribe. Because this isn't the last time we shine a light on the quiet ways people get erased and the powerful ways they fight back. Tomorrow's story? Fired after taking 3 days off for my dad's funeral. My boss had approved it. He thought I'd beg for my job back. He had no idea I'd make one phone call and change his career forever. I didn't get revenge. I got something better. I got the last word and the first step towards something that was finally mine.